SEO is a bitch, but you can implement these things to help your podcast appear more frequently in Apple Podcasts and Spotify when people type in search terms related to your show or related to specific episodes of your show, as well as come up on Google when people type in keywords related to your podcast. What up, potty people, and welcome back to Clipped. As always, I'm Eric, your host, and Clipped brings you podcast production tips, resources, education, and industry insights, all aimed to help you become a better, more efficient podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you start, grow, and monetize your show. And this week, I'm replaying an episode about podcast SEO. It was episode 54 of this show, obviously, of this show. So if you want to go back and listen to that, please do. In that episode, I give you 5 tips on ways to boost your podcast SEO. And I'm actually going to add to that list today with 2 new SEO tips that I think you can add to this that are just going to benefit you. SEO is a bitch, but you can implement these things to help your podcast appear more frequently in Apple Podcasts and Spotify when people type in search terms related to your show or related to specific episodes of your show, as well as come up on Google when people type in keywords related to your podcast. And if you just want to jump right to these 2 tips, I'm going to put them at time code 1543. That's 1543 to hear the new content. For this episode, it's 2 new tips on how to boost your podcast SEO footprint. But before you even listen to this episode, if you're brand new, I want you to go to riverside.fm. Riverside is the sponsor of this podcast, and it's a great place to record online podcasts. You can record remotely and or just looking at your computer by yourself, recording solo casts, get 4K video, high fidelity audio, and take advantage of all their AI tools that will write your show notes for you. They will produce your transcript. They will even cut clips together with AI with like the click of a button. A lot of great stuff going on over there. Tons of features that benefit podcasters. That's riverside.fm. Enter promo code CLIPPED at checkout and get 20% off. Now, 7 SEO tips to boost your podcast online footprint. Let's give it a go. Alrighty, so search engine optimization. What the hell is that? Well, SEO or search engine optimization, it's really about like enhancing the visibility of your content on the internet, making it easier for your target audience to find. So in essence, it's a science, but there's also a little bit of an art to it. Number 1, turning your podcast into blog posts. This is a no-brainer, and it's kind of like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, although it does take a little bit of work. So you're going to get your podcast transcribed. Doesn't matter where you do that. Then you're going to go through the transcription and highlight the episode's main talking points and turn that into a standalone article. And you're going to want to reformat the copy or reformat the transcription rather, make some tweaks and some edits and really put it in a readable format. This is great for accessibility, for people that are hard of hearing or people that just prefer to read. And basically it gives Google more text to crawl and improves your chance of showing up in search results. Really, it makes it like a one-stop hub for your audience. So you're going to have the podcast and then the blog post. I'm honestly a big fan of this, and I know this podcast is all about podcasting, but I think written content is an important component to your podcast that a lot of people forego or just don't really know or don't want to deal with. Yes, it's going to take a little bit more time, but Google does a better job of indexing written content than it does audio. So the more written content that you have on the web, on your website, the better chance you're going to have of Google pulling that in. And when people are searching for keywords that are in your blog posts, that are in your content, you're going to have a better chance of showing up as a top search result. It might not necessarily lead to a ton of more podcast listeners and subscribers and followers, but you're going to start driving more traffic to your website, driving more traffic to your ecosystem, to your brand, and that's going to generate more awareness. And it's going to start getting people familiar with who you are. And it's just another touch point
People are going to start to recognize you, and eventually the goal is that they're going to follow the podcast, or the goal is that you're going to get more people to your website, and maybe you have other products and services that you sell on your website, and the podcast is kind of like lead gen for that stuff. Or maybe you're a coach. You're just going to build traffic to your website. And the more traffic you get, the more you're going to be able to monetize your offerings. So what I do is I'll record my podcast and then I'll transcribe it in Descript, and I'll put a link. By now, a lot of you are probably familiar with Descript. If you're not, I'll put a link in the show notes. You upload your audio file, it'll automatically transcribe it. And this is AI, mind you, so it's about 85% accurate. Then I'll copy paste that into a Google Doc or directly into WordPress, and I'll start to craft a blog post from it. All right, number 2, the art of titling. So titling your episodes is more important than you might think. For one, it's the first thing that potential listeners are going to see, and it's your first chance to hook them with something compelling or something that like represents what you're going to be talking about in the episode. Honestly, even the podcast that I follow that I'm like a regular listener of, I'll read the title, and if it's something that I think I'm going to like, I'll definitely listen to it. If it's about a topic that maybe I already know about that, or I just am not interested in that at the moment, I'll skip it. And so that's coming from me as someone who listens to these podcasts. I see the title and I make that decision. So think someone that's not already a fan of the show, the title is going to be really important for drawing them in and getting that attention and making it relevant. So titling is important. Here are a couple tips. You're going to want to include relevant keywords in your episode title that can boost your podcast SEO. This makes it easier for listeners to discover your podcast when they're searching for certain topics or keywords. So, for instance, this podcast, it's all about podcast SEO. So when someone types into Google, how to improve my podcast SEO, or how to boost my podcast SEO, or tips for improving podcast SEO, whatever it is, my goal is to have this episode, whether it's the blog or whether it's the actual audio, show up in Google. And so I'm going to put literally, I haven't titled this yet, but I'm definitely going to include the key phrase podcast SEO in the title. Also, when people are searching in podcast apps, maybe they're not searching in Google, maybe they're searching on Spotify because they want to listen to a podcast about how to improve podcast SEO. The goal is to craft this content in this episode and this title so that it comes up in as many places as possible when people type in a key phrase related to this episode, in this case, which is how to improve your podcast SEO. So yeah, that's key. And like I said, making it accurate to what the episode's about. Don't get too clickbaity with it. I mean, you can use a couple hook words in there or like fun, selly words that might like lure people in. But just be honest, be accurate, and use ChatGPT if you need something that I do. There's a trick that I do that you guys can do. So after the episode's recorded, like I said, get it transcribed. And then I will copy paste that transcription into ChatGPT. And I'll be like, hey, ChatGPT, I need 5 titles for this podcast episode. And they must, the 5 titles must include the keywords podcast SEO. And all this is just going to help the listener decide if they want to listen. And it's also going to improve your chances of the episode being seen. It really is like an important strategy that people don't spend enough time doing. Where do you get these keywords? How do you know what people are searching for, what people want, what kind of episodes or blog posts they want to hear and learn about? You're going to use keyword research tools. And there's 2 that I use. One of these is free. It's called Google Trends. So just go to Google Trends and then you can type in whatever. You could type in like golden retrievers, or you could type in podcast SEO, how to grow a podcast, podcast equipment. You could type in golf. You could type in how to get better at golf. Whatever it is, you're going to see how those words are trending, how many people are searching for those words. So you're going to have an idea of if the topic that you want to do a podcast about is something that people are interested in and something that people are searching for. That's a free one, Google Trends. The other one that I use, it's paid. It's a little bit pricey. It's called Ahrefs, Ahrefs, and I'll put a link in the description. But this gives you way more in-depth information about, who is already writing about these keywords, what content is ranking for these keywords, how many people are searching for these keywords, what competitors are doing, how competitors have used these keywords in their content. And so it's just a lot more information, and you can use this to craft podcast topics. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to make every episode that you podcast about based on like keywords that are trending or keywords that are popular that people are looking for information or answers for. But I do think it should be part of your strategy. I think if you're like a solopreneur or a business or a brand and you're kind of doing this for leads or to get more people, to get more eyes and ears, then it is critical to do some kind of keyword research around an episode concept that you're thinking of creating. And then you can craft the episode more granularly about what people are actually looking for. And I don't know, again, that you need to do this for every single episode, but I think it can help boost your numbers, and it can help more people find your podcast when you're podcasting about things that they're looking for. All right, so the fourth tip is show notes. And show notes are obviously a part of the podcasting process. The show notes are similar to the blog post. They're a more summarized version of what was talked about in the episode. And in order for show notes to rank on Google, it's my understanding that you need to write a minimum of 300 words. So this gives search engines more data to crawl and to rank, but it also is beneficial for listeners who might refer back to things that you talked about in the episode. Or if you have a promo code, it's hard for listeners to like memorize that on the fly. You can put that in your show notes. And it's really just kind of like having a home base on one end. And then the other end, again, more written content that you have about an episode. Let's say you have a podcast. Well, if you're listening to this, you probably definitely have a podcast, or you want to have a podcast. So you release the audio. Then you create a blog from the transcription. Boom, that's 2 pieces of content. Then let's say you also actually post the transcript, which is going to be full of all the keywords that you talked about in the episode. That's 3. Then you have your show notes. That's 4. So that's 4 pieces of content for one episode that can all be made by getting that episode transcribed, then crafting show notes from the transcription, crafting that blog post from the transcription. And when you put the episode, the show notes, the transcript, and the blog post on your website, that's a ton of information about one topic. And the more you crank this out over time and really, optimize each individual piece of content, the better chance you're going to have of growing your podcast, growing your ecosystem, getting more traffic to your website to then sell whatever you're offering to get people more involved with who you are, what you do, and convince people that they want what you're selling. Number 5, let's not forget YouTube, the world's second largest search engine behind Google. So you're going to want to upload your podcast to YouTube. People are constantly going to YouTube to figure out how to do something or for an answer about something specific. And even if you don't have a video podcast, which is a whole nother topic, you got to at least put the audio up with like a static image. And then you can, in the YouTube description, paste those show notes, put links, those titles of those episodes. People are going to be searching YouTube for something similar to the way that you titled your podcast. And so YouTube, I don't really need to say too much, but the world's second largest search engine, and Google actually prioritizes a lot of YouTube stuff in search results. So if you go to YouTube and type in something, how to train a dog, let's say, there's going to be people's videos that come up that answer questions or provide more information in video format. Below that is usually all the written content, but having that video podcast is key for coming up in searches, because a lot of times I have pretty good articles that rank, but there'll be videos ahead of me and I'm like, damn, someone did a video on that. That video is ranking in like the top 5 of Google for that key phrase or those search terms. And I'm like, damn, I need to do more videos because Google's prioritizing that. People love watching stuff. Maybe they're more of like a visual learner than maybe they don't want to read like a long blog post. But anyway, you got to be on YouTube. If you're not, start today. At least just put the audio up with like a static image. Copy paste your show notes that you've already written into the YouTube description. Put your links. Oh, and when you tag things, so you can YouTube tags, you can tag up to 500 characters worth of stuff, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to double check, but put some of those keywords in those tags. Again, you could also use ChatGPT for this. What I do is I'll put the transcript into ChatGPT and I'll say, ChatGPT, I need relevant hashtags for YouTube. I want them in a format that I can copy paste, and it'll give me tons of tags. And then I just copy paste those into the YouTube tag box. So the way you title it, the way you write your show notes, the video you create, all of these things. So let's break it down. That's 5 things. That's your audio podcast, show notes, transcript, blog. That's for YouTube. That's 5 things you could be doing to optimizing every episode that you create, and getting in front of people's eyeballs when they're putting in search terms. So
number 6 is guest networking. And the way you want to look at this in terms of like an SEO boost is when you guest on somebody's podcast, chances are if they know what they're doing and they're legit and they have a website for their show, they're going to put your episode on their website and they're going to link to you, to your website, to your socials, if you're an author, to your book, or to whatever products or services you offer. And it's beneficial because when they link back to your podcast or back to your website from their own website, that's going to improve your SEO because you're going to get that backlink. And what a backlink is basically when someone links back to your website. And Google sees that as like link juice, and it shows Google that like you're reputable, that people want to drive traffic to your site, and that's going to help in the long term with your SEO. Obviously, like one backlink isn't going to do it, but the more backlinks you get and the more other reputable sites and reputable people that are linking back to your website, it just shows Google that you're legitimate and that people trust you. It builds your authority. In turn, that's going to help grow your podcast and or your website, which will in turn help grow your business, get more leads, et cetera, et cetera. So the more you guest on other people's shows, the more likely that is to happen. It's going to encourage people to check out your podcast as well, because if you're on a podcast, they link back to your podcast. It's going to tell the viewers or the listeners of that show that you are on that host trusts you, and that host is telling their listeners, hey, check out my friend over here. Click this link and go check out his stuff because I like him. I trust him. We had a good conversation. I think listeners, when they see that, they're more apt to check it out because they trust that host and they're kind of in that ecosystem and they're like, oh, I'll go over here. I'll check out Eric's show because John Smith linked to it. And so number 7 is user engagement encouragement. So when you encourage your listeners to leave reviews or ratings on Apple and Spotify, those positive reviews and ratings can improve your podcast's visibility within the search results of those apps. And those algorithms are more likely to recommend or to push forward your show or an episode of your show when people are typing in search terms related to the stuff that you're putting out. And additionally, when you engage with your audience through comments or social media outside of just like the podcast listening apps, you're going to foster a community around your podcast. And that engagement, we know, or at least we think we know, helps the presence of your social media accounts come up in the algorithms as well. And higher retention rates and engagement and the sharing of stuff, it just helps boost your SEO within those social media platforms, but also within the podcast listening apps. So honestly, you just want to encourage user engagement in everything that you do. If you're trying to build a brand or build a community, engagement is key. I mean, you don't have a community if you don't engage. Well, there you have it. That's 7 SEO tips to boost your podcast visibility. And keep in mind, guys, SEO is a long game. You know, you've got to do this over and over. Take these tips, keep implementing them, and you have to be like aggressively patient. Aggressively patient is actually a term I heard about investing in the stock market or investing like in your business, growing a business. So keep doing these things. And I think in the long run, you'll start to see some results. You'll start to, boost that organic traffic and those organic downloads. And that's really what we want, because it is difficult to grow a podcast. Yes, there are paid strategies, but the organic reach and the organic growth is best, but it does take time. And hopefully these tips will help you get there slowly but surely. Keep at it. And if you're looking for more tips, head on over to the podcasthaven.com/blog, where I write about everything podcast related: equipment, monetization, growth, networking, all types of good stuff that can help you on your podcast journey. And chances are some of these articles can answer a lot of questions you have. So that's the podcasthaven.com/blog. And until next time, keep listening, keep engaging, keep creating. I'm out.